So I love film stocks. Like I said, 250D, 500T, that's what we shot my film Bad Animal on, along with tons of other stuff. So I thought it'd be really interesting to take a look, do a deep dive on what exactly does that negative look like that we got back, what does it look like as we're coloring it, and then what do those film emulations look like? So we're gonna get into that now. So as we take a look at how these looks are kind of developed and what film really looks like, what gives something the film look, I think there's three properties that you can really define. One of them is the color response, which is different from each film stock. It's kind of how the RGB curves are sort of naturally built to respond to the film emulation. The second one is like the grain and movement pattern that just comes from that photochemical process, the silver particles on the film and the kind of organic movement of the film as it flows through the shutter. That's something that's pretty hard to emulate digitally, but the film grain aspect can be done pretty convincingly. The last one is this sort of halation element, which is that as film, which has a lot more headroom, you could point a film camera at the bright sun and retain a lot of detail. But as it gets closer to the high end of that response curve for the light, it starts to kind of roll off even softer, and it creates that sort of subtle halation. It almost looks like a blooming or a red. It's very beautiful, it's very artistic. And so when you're talking about the film look, those are the three things that I kind of assign to them. When people make these LUTs, like you can buy all kinds of LUTs, there's a lot of really beautiful looks and you look at them, you think it's amazing, and you go, you buy it, you pay 20 or 30 bucks or whatever, and you download it, and you start putting it on your footage and you're like, this looks nothing like it. The reason for that is because there are LUTs that can replicate the color of some different film stocks, but they're not gonna give you the grain and the halation, which are key elements kind of that create the softness and organic nature of film. What you can do is build these into your color pipeline. So if you're using Resolve, which is what we use for color, DaVinci Resolve, you can go and actually make an effects rack that, in addition to the LUT, allows you to get the color and the look. So when you see people who are kind of showing off those shots, you think, oh, I want to be able to do that. Well, it's not a plugin, it is still handcrafted. So we are actually gonna give you the process here. I've got a couple LUTs for free that I put together. One of them is to match the 250D, one of them is to match the 500T. And then I've also made a little companion video with this that will show you how you can take DaVinci Resolve and build these effect racks in a way to create the whole look. Now, if you don't have the paid studio version of Resolve, you actually can't use the halation filter, so that one you're gonna have to put aside. But if you're willing to pay for it, if you already have Studio Resolve and you can watch this tutorial, you can kind of build it, take the LUTs, and hopefully you can get an amazing look that is a very convincing film emulation. All right, so here we are in Resolve. We're ready to build some free LUTs for you. We're going to take a look at film clips that we have. Let's look at the negative. So these are Cintel Cineon scans, 16 millimeter. You can see here the full frame of it. This is the negative, and we've got 500T, same deal, negative. And then I also brought in, just for fun, for point of reference, those shots were from the same time of day, kind of dusk. This is also a dusk shot with the sky, although it's in Montana, so looks quite a bit different than Chicago. But we're just gonna use it as a frame of reference for the looks that we are building. So I've actually already got these looks built. I wanted to do it so I could save you some time tooling around, but I'm gonna show you how it works. I'm gonna show you how we do this in Resolve. Now, let me caveat by saying I'm not the ultimate Resolve expert, although I do know what I'm doing in here. So if you see me not using the hotkeys or whatever, I'm like a premier expert Resolve. I know what I'm doing. But if you got any tips for me, feel free to drop them in the comments. So let's take a look to jump off. So we work in ACEs at the studio here. So everything is transformed to ACEs. So the way that we do it, in case you're wondering, we go to the clip level, or the group level, I should say. So we group, like in this case, these two shots, which are both film, both Cineon. We would group them, which I've already done. And then on the group level, we apply the ACES transform. So if you look at the effects, you'll see here, ADX10, I guess that's what it is. They don't really have a direct Cineon in here, but we're taking it to ACES 2.0. The CSC, and then we finish the transformation on the timeline level. So once everything is in aces on the timeline, and this is all we have on the timeline, everything else is in the groups, but yeah, we'll finish it out on the timeline level, and we take it to Rec 709, BT 1886. So the fun stuff in this case is happening on the group post clip, because this is where I've actually built the looks. With the film, you'll see that we want to keep it as simple as possible. So after we have done the transformation, on the clip level, I just added a little curve. This is the only thing that's going on from a look standpoint, because these shots were maybe a little underexposed, or maybe it's just the way the transform is. Same thing here, and you can see the curve right here. So I'm not doing it. It's just a very simple S curve, which, you could always dial in if you wanted to change what you were doing. With ProRes, you've got a lot of room to work with it, but I thought it was in a decent place because this was the intended look. I think the final film probably looks similar to this. We didn't do a huge grade on the film because that's why you shoot film, keep it easy. But how would I describe these stocks? So to me, this is the 250D. To me, I see the kind of cyan and blues in the shadows and in the midtones. The highlights warm up a little bit. Obviously, film in general has three properties like we talked about. So there's the color, which we're talking about, the color response. There is the grain, which you can see the fine grain pattern. And then there's the halation element. So those are the three things. And halation is the blooming on the highlights. It's the kind of red highlights you see. And it gets maybe overused once people unlock this filter on DaVinci. So you see a lot of people just slapping halation on everything, CapCut, whatever, for social media, and it gets overused. But it is, when subtly used, it's an important part of the film look, and I think it can be very beautiful in its rendering. So these, this is 250D. Now, I would say 500T to me is, in some ways, it's kind of the opposite. It's got this kind of deeper red cyan, it's got this kind of deeper magenta going on in the shadows and mids, and then it kind of cools off as you get higher in the response curve. So this is maybe a little bit duskier than the other shot. That's the nice thing about 500 is, I think we were kind of rating it more like 800, which is why it was a little underexposed. We just pushed it. But in a way, the grain pattern is even finer here than it is on the 250. Now, I would guess it's because the 250, we probably underexposed a little bit too much. We really wanted to make sure that we got these nice silhouette shots. And so it was hey, let's just go for it, because we definitely didn't want it to be overexposed, and we nailed the silhouettes. I love the way this shot looks, but maybe, traditionally you would consider it a little underexposed. You can see we shot ultra 16. So in the final crop, the final crop lines, we lose these perforations on the edges. Classic 16 would just be the box without the perforations, but the ultra, we our camera tech shimmed the gate open on the sides, and so it gives us a little more room to crop. Not quite as wide as Super 16, but we framed it up all the way to a 2K scan, and it still looked great. So Ultra 16 is pretty awesome. Okay, so let's take a look. I've kind of built these looks. Again, I did it on the group post clip level. So this first one is my emulation of the 250D. This is the 500T. This is the grain layer, and this is the halation layer. So you can take a look right here. We'll build it one at a time. So we will turn off the grain. We'll turn off the halation. And let's just start it. This is just aces, right? So this is the aces transform on the shot. Pretty well exposed. So the 250D first. So we've brought in the kind of cyan in the shadows and the midtones. Now, this is already a blue-ish shot, and we warmed up the highlights a little bit. You won't see the same intensity as I think you're going to see with the 500 switch, just because this was a cooler shot to begin with. And it is obviously a lot more detailed than 16. So that's where we're able to kind of soften it with some of these other effects. Now, when you go and buy these LUT effects, I'm sure you're getting ads all the time on social media. If you're a filmmaker or wherever, you're getting these ads where it's buy our LUT pack and, get these amazing looks. And then you look at the LUTs and it doesn't have that glow. It doesn't have that film look. And the reason is because they're creating that with grain and halation. And if you have DaVinci, or I think some of these are in the free ones, but you might have to get the studio for halation. But But you can make these too, very simple, and build them. So I'm going to show you the sliders. If you want to learn DaVinci, you can do it yourself. You can also take the LUTs and just take the colors, and that's fine too. That's a way to get a look. So the LUT is going to transform your footage all the way from S-Log. It's going to include the ACES transformation and the 250 or 500D, depending on which one you're using. So this is that 250. And the way I built it, if you're curious, I did it with just the color wheels. You know, I gave it like this kind of subtle sort of in the, you know, in the shadows, the magenta, and I kept it real kind of minimal. I mean, you could do more if you wanted to, but I liked it where it was. You can also just drive it up a bit if you want, you know, but I think that kind of overdoes it. This is what I'm giving you guys. It's a more subtle one. You can always go in and play with it yourself if you want to make it a little bit more intense. And so I did it in the darks, I did it in the shadows, and in the lights we kind of went a little bit warmer with it. And I think I tooled just a little bit around with the lift and the gamma sliders as well. So now I turn that off, and here we go. This is our 500. So 500 is definitely warmer. The shadows are warmer. The highlights are, the highlights get a little cooler once you get up to the top, but the midtones are warmer. And so this has got that reddish, warmish look. To me, it's 500. You know, that's kind of where that's our baseline where we start. Oh, it kicked us over to another shot here. So let's go back here. Now, this is where it kind of gets interesting. Now, you can screen cap this right here if you want to see what this looks like. I played around with it a decent bit. I really think this is what the 16 millimeter grain pattern looks like. Like, I wouldn't just use the one they have out of the box. It's got a pretty fine grain, like more fine than you might even expect. But it's definitely noticeable, and I think you could even get away with punching it up a little bit more if you wanted to. Of course, here's the real magic, the halation effect. So on off it for you. You can see the halation is going to add, now we could dial back the saturation and the highlights, but it's going to add those kind of nice up here. Here you've got these kind of subtle sort of on off, right? Like the glowing, you know, if you wanted to add even more, you could do like a gate weave. We could track the motion out from one of these. Like, take a look, see how it's weaving back and forth. You could track the motion on this little movement. Then you could add the track. Oh, there's a lot there. Look at that. It's just ripping through the gate. Now that is a cool effect to film, but you could easily add it if you wanted to. I'm not going to do it right now just for the sake of time. Maybe another video we can work on the tracking for that. So yeah, this is the 250, or that's the 500, I should say. So let's say 500, okay, and 250. Almost like the way the 250 looks more, but it makes sense because this is a daylight situation. Kept the halation the same. Probably could dial that in a little bit. Either way, the halation and the grain are not going to come through in the LUT. So if you want those effects, you're going to have to pull the sliders yourself in DaVinci. So I'm going to make those LUTs available to you, linked in the description. You can download them there, and we'll wrap up the video.